So thank you everyone for joining this webinar on how to buy rugged IT solutions for your business. My name is Per Holmberg and I'm the CEO at the JLT Group. With me today, I have Matt Meersman, VP of Sales of Americas, who will be doing the actual presentation, and Lucy Cunnington, our marketing manager, who will be managing questions and chats in the background. So Matt's presentation will last for about 30 minutes, and then we will have a 15-minute Q&A session at the end. There will also be a poll at the end. The presentation is being recorded and you will be sent a link to it after the presentation when ready. So to minimize unwanted noises and distraction, your cameras are off and so are your microphones by purpose. At the bottom of your screen, you have a Q&A button. And you also have a chat button. Please use the Q&A button for any questions you may have during the presentation. Lucy will either type an answer directly during the presentation, or Matt will answer them verbally during the Q&A session at the end. If you have any other comments or issues with the webcast, please use the chat button to get hold of Lucy. This presentation is based on a JLT guide, which can be found on our website under Knowledge and Inspiration section. So you have that as a documentation as well. We know that buying the right IT solution for your warehouse or other places is not easy. There is a wide selection of products and options available. We also know that every business has its specific challenges and requirements. So choosing the right device will boost your productivity and improve your workforce engagement. Choosing the wrong, though, will slow your operation down and incur unnecessary costs. So in this seminar, Matt will talk about the real cost of not having the right IT in your operation, and then take you through 9 points to consider when purchasing equipment, and at the end, leave you with 5 key takeaways for you to keep in mind when you evaluate your options. So let me introduce Matt. Matt has extensive experience in the IT business, especially with IT solutions for demanding environments. In different sales leadership roles at JLT over the past 13 years, and at IBM Lenovo for the previous 10 years before that, he has worked with thousands of customers to understand their strategic objectives and to bring them proven solutions that work. He's a respected subject matter expert at customers as well as internally at JLT. So without further ado, here is Matt.
Thank you, Per. I appreciate that. Appreciate the introduction. And we'll go ahead and we'll jump right in, because what we're going to be talking today is about what is the cost of picking the wrong device, and then what key criteria should we be looking at to make sure when you're going through your selection process, you pick the right one for your business. So let's start with some numbers. If I look at VDC would tell us the average breakdown of in an IT takes 53 minutes to fix. You lose 78 minutes of productivity, and it'll take more than one person. And I'll tell you, based on the number of customers I've been into, it's worse than that, because what happens after you have an IT breakdown, yes, you have loss of productivity directly to an employee. That employee goes to their manager. That manager has a loss of productivity. That manager goes to IT. Now I've got 3 people involved. I still haven't fixed the problem. What happens next is, if I look at a warehouse, trucks stop leaving on time, or that leads to the frustration of the next truck coming into the warehouse bay doesn't get to leave. Things start to back up. If I look at ports, ships and coming and going are very expensive. They need to be on time. And field service, where you've got people on the road, there's expectations that they're going to make deliveries on time. And those expectations are getting higher every day in our marketplace. Customers want to know where their product is, when it's going to be delivered, who had it last. Now they're down to, oh, I'm looking for a 10-minute window expectations. These are very high. And when we start missing because of an IT issue, in this case today, we're going to be talking about devices that are in your employees' hands. It makes a difference. So I will also share with you the next piece that we see is in this unhappy employee. A good number of customers that I talk to, they pay their employees based on productivity. And if the employee now loses that opportunity to be productive because the device they have isn't working, it gets expensive. Okay. So we're gonna do a little more overview, and then we're gonna get into the detail of the specs that we'll be talking about that are in each device and things that you would consider. So before I do that, I want to break this into two categories. So we're talking about vehicle-mounted computers as a category, and we're also going to talk about handhelds and tablets as a category. We'll put those two together and talk about them as we go. The reason I'm going to separate that is because they have different requirements. Vehicle-mounted computers are going to take a significant amount of vibration that are going to come either off whether it's a crane in a port or a forklift in a warehouse. You're going to have uneven surfaces, composite tires. You're going to have also things we're going to talk about today about antenna connectivity that is different than a handheld or a tablet. Connectivity is different for these devices. In tablets, form factor is everything, right? It has to show your screens the way that the employees need them. At the same time, you need to run the correct operating system that makes it usable and applicable for IT. You have to have a battery that is going to last all day or last through the shift, or have a way to swap them quickly from one to the next. So as we go through today's presentation, I'm going to separate those things because the combustion engine or a 12, 24, 36, 48 volt forklift has different requirements than a handheld and battery life. All right, let's talk about some specifications when we get started. First one's going to be something we call, or the industry calls IP, ingress protection, broken into two numbers, the first and the second. First number is a dust protection number. Just to be in the rugged space, you would need to be an IP5, which means it's dust protected. Dust kills computers. It gets in, gets across the circuit boards, and enough dust on your circuit boards, you will shorten the life of your computer. Most of the truly rugged devices we would see would be an IP6, meaning dust does not get inside the device. At this point, you've taken out any fans that would be bringing dust across your boards. You've fully sealed it on all sides. The second number is liquids, right? So you would have a splash of water would be an IP4. A jet of water would be a 5. This would also be things that you would take about, let's say, a rain or a driving rain. 6 and 7 are beyond what you might necessarily need in a warehouse. So a heavy C's or strong jets, you might need this in a food processing plant. So we'll pay attention to it for those. Immersion. So if you would take a dust-tight immersion device, IP67, in a warehouse, you probably have bigger problems if your device is underwater, if it's a VMT. But if it's a handheld, being dropped into a puddle and staying there for a bit before it gets picked up would not be surprising. So it's something that you would need to pay attention to as you're looking at that type of device. So dusty and damp are things that you would pay attention to for an IP, but there are other ones that are important as well. So if we were to take, let's say you were in a paint factory or you're at an oil site, these are going to use a different specification. In North America, we call it a classification, Class 1 Div 2, Class 1 Div 1 for the type of explosive environment you're in. Overseas, we see it called the ATEX, right? So it's a different type of certification. If you're in an oil well offshore, you're going to want an ATEX certification to go along with that device. As we talk through today, we're going to talk about heat and cold and how that would affect not just the electronics, but also affect your screen technology. Okay, so let's talk about screens, and we'll talk about weights, and we'll talk about the other things that go into your device. Screens are important. We're going to break them into two categories. If I look at VMTs, they're going to be outside. In most cases, if you're on a forklift, it's going to go outside. It's going to be picking things up. It's going to come back inside of its warehouse. It's going to be in a port. It's going to be in a vehicle that's on the road, and that goes to its use case. It could be inside a pickup truck or a semi truck that you're going to need good screen visibility during the day, in which case screen brightness is important. If you're always inside of a warehouse, screen brightness isn't as important, but being able to turn it down is. Because I think, as we all know, if you have your phone brightness turned all the way up at night, it's hard on the eyes, and your employees want to be able to dim that down so they can see the screen. Not necessarily the case for handhelds and tablets. Handhelds and tablets, you really need to be able to turn up that brightness to be able to see it outside. They have the advantage of they can usually turn themselves and position themselves to get the best angle on the screen. So screen angle becomes important. In a VMT, the tablet will never be mounted directly in front of you. It's not safe. You need your employee on a forklift, on a crane, in a vehicle to be able to have a good line of sight to the floor, to the products in front of them and above. So you'll see most VMTs mounted up to the right, up to the left, sometimes down by the employee's knees. Either way, it is out of the direct line of sight, which makes viewing angle very important. A lot of tablets might just have a viewing angle of 90 degrees. You want to get as close to 180 with a VMT as you can. I think a good VMT, you would probably see a visibility angle of about 120 degrees. Handhelds and tablets, we get to look straight at them. We're going to adjust that tablet handheld to where we want it to be for our best visibility. So angle's not necessarily as important on those, but brightness is. Most handhelds and tablets on a field service application would be outside the warehouse and would need good screen visibility. Screen size is important. So you need to be able to see your application. Depending on the application, if it's a simple web browser, you need to be able to make it to scale to show the employees the job that they're trying to get done. Too much on a screen is distracting. Not enough on a screen causes them to click through too many. So size of that screen will be important. On a forklift, you can usually get to a bigger screen. It's further away from their face. A handheld or a tablet, they got the opportunity to bring it closer. But then again, if they are looking at schematics of a building or drawings, you can't do that on a small screen and be effective. So screen size is going to be important. And what does that mean? You've got to put it in your employees' hands. So it's something that we encourage every time through our partners, to our customers. Take the device, get your specs. You think you have them right, get a few of those devices, get them into the employee's hands, get them tested, because that part's going to be important. Also on screen technology, you've got to look at ruggedness. Screens will dim at cold temperatures. Circuitry and the computers will start to go down at high temperatures. So buying a rugged device that meets your needs for the environment that your employees are going to be in, which has to do with temperature, it's important. Scratch and shock resistance in screens, there's two types that we see in the market today, probably three. There are resistive touch screens, which is a standard technology where it doesn't matter what you're touching the screen with, it's going to physical touch is going to give you the interaction. There is a projective capacitive where it's looking for the touch of your finger or a stylus or something to interact. Third one is a digitizer. If you need highly sensitive touches to the screen, maybe you might pick a digitizer. But in these, there's other things you have to pay attention to. I know when I have my phone and it gets wet, the screen will start to jump around. It'll start to do clicks by itself, unwanted. That can't really happen in your tablet carry around technology. You need your VMT, your handheld, your tablet to have consistent screen technology that's not doing false touches. So looking at the screen technology that's in it is important. Not every manufacturer has caught up to screen technology that it can be in a rain and tell the difference between the rain and a touch of your finger. So it's something that you want to pay attention to. Let's talk about size and weight. We touched on this a little bit when we talked about in a VMT. It needs to be big enough to show your application because it's not going to be directly in front of them. Usually it's 2-3 feet away, up to the side, away from the driver of a forklift or a crane. It might be further away. So to have a 10-inch or 12-inch in the cabin can make sense, but forklifts are getting smaller, right? The cabin space is getting smaller. And so paying attention to what makes sense for your employees is important. Handhelds and tablets, this is all about the application. You need to be able to get enough on the screen to be able to see what they're doing without clicking through too many times. You want to go as small as you can to make the device light because larger devices cause larger batteries. All of that creates weight. But if you're looking at schematics, you need a large screen, then that's going to be the case. So the size and the weight are things that you're going to pay attention to. And the question is going to be, do your employees need to have their hands available? So it could be you need a small enough device that they can hang it off a belt, or it could be that that's okay. They've got some place to set it down and make their hands free. So we're going to look at size and weight and compare those as part of your decision making. So let's talk about power, okay? I'm sorry, we're going to go ahead and talk about other things that you're going to look at in VMTs and tablets. So power, to be specific. On a VMT, I'm looking to take power directly from the vehicle. If it is a combustion engine, I can usually get 12 volts. If it's electric, I'm going to have 36, 48, could be 24, 36, 48, with spikes going much higher. Ideally, I want to be able to take the power directly from the vehicle and run the computer from it without any external devices. That's easy to say. At the same time, most customers start with mixed fleets. I've got some combustion, I've got some electric. So on these, we tell customers, go ahead and pick the device that is the direction you're headed, meaning I'm going to have all electric lifts in 2 years, then go ahead and get the unit that is specified for that. And then there are some external modules that do a great job, that are rugged, that will take you from your combustion up to electric. If you're moving towards combustion, which not many customers are, you can buy the same thing going the other way. Handhelds, on the other hand, are going to need your battery. And now battery technology is something you have to pay attention to. How long does it take a battery to charge? Can I swap the battery? How long will that battery last? And how long it will last will probably depend on what processor you have in that handheld or tablet. From a handheld and tablet, we'll talk about operating systems here in a minute, but we come from a CE, long battery life is an expectation. A lot of that moved to Android from a handheld standpoint. But when we go to tablets, you've got a choice. It could be Android, it could be Windows. And then the same is true on vehicle mounted computers. Could be Android, could be Windows. We'll talk about those in a minute. If I take a moment just to go back to VMTs, backup batteries are important. Forklifts, cranes, vehicles, they all get turned off. That doesn't mean you want your application to crash. You need to keep it up and running for the right amount of time. And then you also need to make sure that your computer shut down cleanly so you don't have any corruptions to your databases. So if we were going to be going into a fleet, I would be asking the questions. What voltage does it run on? Get some specifics about what kind of lifts, cranes, trucks they have so we can help pick the right size. If you're into handhelds and tablets, you want to make sure that your battery lasts the whole shift or has a battery that can be swapped very quickly without any tools. Connectivity. Really important topic that we need to make sure that we discuss. We're going to look at it it fits into 3 categories. I'm either going to be on Wi-Fi, I'm going to be on cell, or it could be that I'm hardwired connected, in which case it's not really a VMT, it's just a fixed mount computer into a fixed space. We see a good bit of these that the customers will take vehicle mounted computers and keep one device and then they put it into the warehouse and fixed mount them. So it could be Ethernet. But sticking to Wi-Fi and cell, from a cell standpoint, we have 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G's coming. And my advice here is you pick the device that is upgradable to the new technology. So today you might be forced based on your application or your contract to be a 2G, but 2 and 3G probably won't be here if you're buying a new device today in the 5 to 7 years when you're ready to move to a new one. So you need something that is, if not already, is upgradable to 4 and 5G. From a Wi-Fi standpoint, a few years back, if we go back, you only needed 2.4 gigahertz. Now the expectation is you should have 2.4 or 5 gigahertz and be able to go back and forth between the two. It's really important that you buy technology that matches your current environment, but also matches the environment that you're going to. So I'm at 2.4 today, that's great, but sometime in the next 5 years, you might want to move to 5 gigahertz, and therefore you're going to want to buy systems that are capable of the move. The next piece I'm going to talk about is antennas. It's interesting that we see many customers taking tablets and mounting them onto forklifts. And for some customers, it works. But here's the specification that you're going to want to pay attention to. Forklift-mounted computers that were designed as such have 2 antennas. One is attached to the network. The other one's looking for the best signal available. And as those 2 antennas start to switch and I'm losing connectivity to one access point and coming closer to the next, it's going to switch automatically to always keep you on the network. Tablets, they just don't have that. They've got 1 antenna. And that's okay when you're walking on the floor of a warehouse, or you're at a port and you're on foot. It's going to roam. It's going to be fine. But when you're moving at 5 miles an hour and therefore going access point, access point, access point, it's not the same. So you need good connectivity when you're in a vehicle. All right, let's move on and talk about software and OS requirements. This is really where people start. It goes down to what is your application today and what is your application going to be. So you start with what OS am I going to, today looking forward, we say, I've got Android, I've got Windows, and I'm going to pick. And then from there, then I'm going to come back to the brains of the computer, which processor. Usually if it's a Windows-based operating system, Windows 10, in this case being specific, not CE or Windows Mobile. So if I'm going to pick Windows 10, I'm going to have an Intel-based processor for the most part. If I'm going to go Android, I'm going to be an ARM processor. I've used the words on this slide, thin client and thick client, but not thin client in the terms of like a WISE terminal. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to your application. Is your application a TE, terminal emulator? Is it a web browser, or is it a really small executable? Because there are processors that will run Windows 10 fabulously and then run these TE web browser fabulously. You don't need a high horsepower Intel-based VMT or tablet to do that. Same goes true for Android. If you've got a TE or a web browser or a app, it might run perfect no matter what Android processor you pick. In this case, it would be an ARM processor. But once you move on to a full application, a homegrown executable that would be more traditional and that has moved through your business, then we're going to call that a thick client. And then your CPU might matter. So to pick a computer that's going to have the horsepower from a processing and a memory standpoint is something that you're going to want to pay attention to. Graphics, depending on your use application, graphics are important. Graphics get driven by the processor. So being able to pick one that has the right processor, the right graphics to come together to deliver your application, this part is important. Accessories are important. We got to pay attention to making sure that the accessories match up with your computer. If I buy a super rugged device, but my mount is always breaking, then the cost of that might as well have not bought a rugged computer. We see in these keyboards, we see scanners, mounts, right? These are the other things that are going to be around your device that you need to make sure is as rugged and keeps your device in service as long as the computer will be. So we're looking to have these as long as possible. I will share that some customers buy very cheap keyboards and they're swapping them, but that swap time goes right back to the beginning of downtime with your computer, because now I've got employees not productive because I'm going to take the 10 minutes it takes to swap out the keyboard. Okay. Down to the last few here that I'm going to talk about, and it goes to service contracts. What's included in them is really important. So before you buy computers or while you're writing your specs, look at them. Some service agreements comes with it is just the manufacturer's defects. On top of that, you'll see manufacturers do comprehensive, but not all comprehensive include screen breakage or multiple screen break. So pay attention to what is in your comprehensive contract. You're going to want to look at turnaround times and other limitations. Some customers want to be able to send in all of their accessories and have their accessories come back to them. Some customers are not going to want the manufacturer to erase the device. They want to be able to send it in with their hard drive and have it come back exactly the way that it was, because it's a wireless issue. It's a hardware fix. It's not an operating wipe, and that saves time on their IT. Some manufacturers will, some won't, but it's something that you'll want to have the conversation about as you're getting ready to pick the right manufacturer for you. Okay, I'm going to summarize with some of these. Specs don't tell the whole story, right? So as you're reading your specs, and I talked about at the beginning, we talked about an IP device. You'll see specs out there that'll say it's IP67 on the front of the screen. It doesn't talk about what's on the side or the back, which of course is going to get exposed to weather as well. So we got to pay attention to the specs don't tell the whole story. You need to look at the environmentals and the suitability for your environments. Prioritize your requirements, because you might not find the exact device that meets every one of your check boxes. So you got to be able to tell very quickly down your list which one of these are must-haves and these are the ones that are want-haves. I want you to take a look at your warranties, comprehensive warranties, service agreements, and make sure that you've got a good manufacturer that will stand by its warranties and turn things in the time that they say they're going to. Some turn around in 2 days, some take 3, some do best effort, and you'll see it coming back to you in 10 days. They need to be consistent over time, being able to do that. Costs are higher than the price tag, and I think that's the summary of this entire presentation is you've got your upfront cost of buying hardware, and today we see lots of things in the marketplace which could be very inexpensive consumer devices, but when that consumer device breaks on a weekly or monthly basis, the cost to IT, the cost to the business, and the cost from your customers coming back to you is significant. So the cost on these things can be significantly higher, and especially since I'm not going to replace this device for 5 years. Maybe it's 7 years, pen, handheld, tablet. You want to be able to stick with it. My last point is, let's get an expert to help you with the best solution. People on the JLT team, this is what we do. We spend time in customers, seeing their applications, seeing how they work, what does and doesn't work. We help our partners deliver those solutions to the end user base. So engage your partner to engage JLT, and we'll go and help you work through these to make sure we pick the right device, because picking the wrong one is expensive. A quick blurb on JLT, right? For those of you who don't know us, we've been in business for 25 years. We do design, engineering, manufacturing of all of our VMT products at our headquarters in Sweden. We've delivered over 100,000 of those devices worldwide. We practice a high-touch model, which is a bit about what I was talking. We want to be there at your customer location. I realize today it's harder to do, so we might have to do some Zoom calls for a bit. But as soon as we're able to, again, we want to be on your site to see what you're seeing, to ask the questions that don't necessarily come up through discovery calls. If we see what you're doing, we understand your process, we can help you through our partners pick the best computers for you. We have the expertise to address your needs. And we're a long-term partner. We have customers that have deployed our devices 7 years ago, and now they're coming back to us because it wasn't the next year, it wasn't the year after that. It's been 7 years because the devices just worked. When they work over 7 years later, they go, that was a great investment. I'm ready to do an upgrade. I'm ready to move from Windows CE and mobile. I'm ready to move to Windows 10. I'm ready to move to Android. And JLT is our trusted manufacturer, along with our partner of choice. So thanks for your time today. I'm going to jump over to take any questions. I think, Lucy, maybe you're going to be able to tee some up for us, and we'll see if there's questions.
Yes, so I've got 4 questions for you here. The first one is, does it matter what version of Android my device uses?
Interesting question. So here's what I know. Once you got past Android 5, anything before that, I would think about. at Android 5, there became some quality enterprise level security in the Android OS. Once you get to about Android 7, now you've got a good, stable OS. New devices that are coming out in the rugged space, most of them come out at Android 9. Those would be devices that only were really delivered here in the last 12 months. Stability is more important. We need to find the right Android version that matches your application. And once you get to Android 7, usually it will be stable enough that you should feel good about buying anything later than Android 7. If you find the exact right device, it's Android 9, Android 7, you're probably making a good choice.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question is, I have heard of Windows Pro and IoT. What is the difference?
I like that question. The difference between Windows Pro and Windows IoT. So in a consumer space, they're going to want things that include, let's say, they're going to include the Edge browser. They're going to want to be able to get to the App Store. You don't want that in the warehouse. You don't want it on your crane manufacturer. You don't want them to be able to go and add things that weren't business approved. So in Windows IoT, LTSB, LTSC is bit for bit the exact same as Windows 10 Enterprise. Most businesses would roll that out. We recommend it because it has certain lockdown features besides being bit for bit the same, which means all of your applications are going to run exactly like they would have in Pro. You're going to pick up some advantages of being able to lock down that device. And you're going to get rid of things like the Edge browser and the Play Store, which you probably don't want your employees having anyways. Good question.
The third one I have here is, I heard Windows was dead in the mobile space. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so that is very interesting. So if I go back to Windows Mobile and Windows CE, this is what the industry talks about. It's over. It's end of life. It is. But that's very different than saying Windows 10 IoT in the mobile space. It is alive and well and is a good fit for customers that have a back-end application that is Windows 10. So I'm going to take something that's in the back office. I'm going to deploy it to a forklift. I'm going to deploy it to a tablet to get data closer to the end user and the end employee. So I'm going to do those directly. So in the tablet and VMT space, Windows 10 alive and well and is a good for customers that are going to move those applications over directly. I like that question. What else do we have?
So the last question for today is, what would you say the advantages of Windows over Android are and vice versa? And actually, I've just had another question as well, so
I'll jump back. Okay, well, let's get this one done. So Android over Windows. You know, I didn't talk about battery life specifically about Android, but the way that architecture is designed, you can take a Android handheld or tablet and usually get 2 to 3 times the battery life just based on its architecture. But you have to have an application designed for it. And it could be, if your application's already done, you don't want to rewrite your Windows application over to an Android. And it also goes to what your business is used to managing. Frankly, if I've got an IT team that is 100% used to managing Windows desktops, then a Windows tablet, a Windows VMT, it could make a ton of sense. If your application is a browser or a telnet, or has already been moved to an app, then Android could work. So I think it depends on those base things of application.
Perfect. So we've just had another question. It is, having a hard time finding resistive screen units with onboard keyboard in small, light format for outdoor application. Have any solutions?
Well, so that's interesting. It depends on your definition of small and light. So I think we could probably get down to about an 8-inch form factor for a Windows tablet. See, Windows tablets have Intel processors that take more battery to run them. And so if I'm going to be at more battery, by its nature, batteries create weight, and you're going to need enough size to run that device. I haven't seen much smaller than the 7-inch form factor, but if it's for a mobile use, in that case, we could get to a 7-inch fully mobile tablet running Windows with a good battery that it would be hot swappable.
Customer has just said that 8 inches is good.
Oh, great. Be happy to help. So if you talk to your JLT representative, they will be happy to link the two of you together.
And if you don't have one, you can reply to the webinar invitation and I will receive that email and forward it for you.
Lucy will connect us. That'll be great. Lucy, do you want to comment, if you don't have any other questions, on the closing survey?
Yeah, so at the moment you should be seeing a closing survey. If you don't, you can click on polls and you can answer the questions. And that is our webinar for today. Thank you very much for joining us. And you will all receive an email once it's ready with the link to a video in case you want to watch this webinar again or share it with your colleagues.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.